to Let's Bet It, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Lawrence Barr here with Jared Smith. Jared, it's a Friday. How are we? Happy Friday.
It is a Friday. Happy Friday.
It is a Friday.
I don't know what
Thank you.
undisclosed location you're currently at today, but I hope your travels have been safe and prosperous.
Thank you.
Very exciting Friday. What a game last night, huh? How about those Rams?
Yeah, okay. How about those Rams in the last, 20 seconds of the game? I had the spread covered until the Raiders decided to absolutely shit the bed.
We almost
and have
middled
two
the game.
massive penalties. That had two massive penalties. Yeah. Kept the drive going at the end of the game. It's just, anyways, let's get into Thursday Night Football reactions as we're talking about it. It's a strange turn of events where Baker Mayfield led his team to a comeback win in his first game in LA with only a couple days to learn the offense. Literally, the Raiders had that game. They had that game. And at the end, we had the most improbable game-winning drive that I've seen in like 10 years. Baker Mayfield found Van Jefferson for the game winner with 10 seconds left. The Raiders committed two massive penalties that kept that drive going. The Raiders are 0-4 this season when leading by 10 at halftime. It wasn't necessarily the Rams winning that game. It was the Raiders shooting themselves in the foot and losing that game. Don't commit those two penalties, and you win the game and you cover the spread. Okay? That's all I got to say about that. But your thoughts on the game, because you, my friend, are the winner of that head-to-head battle that we had. You should have done a swag bet.
Nah, we're done with the swag bets. I've become a perennial loser with the swag bets. So since I've changed my strategy and not offering swag, I've seemed to do better with these. So I'm going to stick to my non-swag and just focus on the numbers, focus on the bets. No, listen, first of all, we should have middled that game last night. You got in early, Raiders minus 5.5. I got in late, Rams +7. It almost was the prime example of why the numbers matter a lot when you're betting the NFL.
Yeah.
You want to be on the right side of the key numbers, 6 and 7 being obviously two very key numbers. And we did a good job navigating the market. The result didn't work out, but the process needs to be commended for both of us, because you got in early when the number was favorable for the Raiders. I got in late when the number was favorable for the Rams. We both should have cashed our tickets last night. Unfortunately, only one of us did. But again, the process is what matters more. The process with the Raiders last night was completely bumbled. They had multiple chances to put that game away. 4th and 1, multiple opportunities in the go zone around midfield-ish. And Josh McDaniels played the game like he was ready to lose instead of playing it to win. And then the penalties and the craziness happened on that final drive, a 98-yard drive in the final 2 minutes of the game. It's the longest drive under 2 minutes to win a game. I think I retweeted somebody last night that tweeted it out. Go look at my Twitter timeline for the exact, whatever. But it was a historic game-winning drive. You got to give credit to Baker, though. I know the Raiders lost the game, and they did, but you got to give credit to Baker. 48 hours later, understood enough to run a 2-minute drill, to be able to move his team up and down the field. The one part of the game last night that I nailed was the Baker cap, that he would be a spark for this team. He clearly was. He can actually throw the football, unlike the other quarterbacks currently active on the Rams roster, Walford and Perkins. And I think he is going to be a short-term spark. I'm not saying he's the long-term answer. The Rams are going to be a Super Bowl champion next year, blah, 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 blah. But compared to Matthew Stafford, which is obviously a massive downgrade to the next guys, Walford and Perkins, I think Baker's a step up from that. And I think he's going to play relatively well down the stretch, and we're going to see what he can do with an offense that has a good mind in Sean McVay. And it was I'll be honest, that was a really fun game.
Yeah.
Take away your bet. That was a pretty entertaining second half last night between those two teams.
Yeah, it was. It was good. And here's the thing with a guy like Baker, I mean, he's playing with no expectations. Guys tend to play well with no expectations because they have literally nothing to play for.
Nothing to lose.
At this point,
nothing to lose.
Besides snapping a 6-game losing skid, which good for you. To be honest, if the Raiders don't commit those two penalties, Baker Mayfield doesn't do what he did at the end of that game. But It was an exciting game to watch. Crazy, good for Amazon too. Actually, getting a good game on Thursday Night Football again. They've only had a couple actually good Thursday Night Football games this entire season. So
yeah. Baker on the set
with
Clarissa Thompson and the crew after the game. It was really good TV. It was I was riveted. I was locked in the whole time. It was really fun to watch.
You love to see it. There's a lot of other good games heading into this weekend. One of them being, let's get into it, Week 14 key games. The Vikings taking on my Detroit Lions. Let's take it to the NFC North. The Lions right now, home favorites against a 10-2 Vikings team. The Lions laying 1.5 here. That total is set at 52 or 51.5. It's ticked down a little bit since it was up to 54, 53.5. The Vikings barely snuck by the Jets last week. They had a late goal line stand. They wouldn't have won that game if the Jets were 1-6 in the red zone last week. Sorry about your New York Jets. The Lions, though, were ferocious last week. 40-14 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jared Goff had probably his best game of the season. 21 of 31 for 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. These two teams played back in Week 3. The Vikings snuck out a win at home. Now they're at Ford Field, where the Lions are averaging just under 32 points per game, which is second in the NFL at home. And the Vikings defense, I know they've stepped up. They've only allowed teams to score on 25% of their red zone possessions over the last 3 weeks. But the Detroit Lions, Detroit, is scoring on just about 75% of their red zone possessions, which is first in the National Football League right now. I feel like this is a really good spot to lay the 1.5 points with the Detroit Lions, and I know you're on the same page for this game.
Yeah, we are lockstep here.
Yeah.
I'll add to your red zone number over the last 3 games. That red zone number is 84% touchdown scoring rate, not just scoring rate, touchdown scoring rate for the Lions. And I've theorized that I don't have any data to back this up. This is just my conjecture from watching these games over the years. The better of a running team you are, the easier the red zone gets, because teams can't just, they can't run it in on us from the 6-yard line and out. Usually from the 3-yard line and in, it's run most of the time. But when you're in that, no man's land in the red zone between the 5 and 10-yard line, if you can run it on 1st and goal from the 8 and get to the 3, you're averaging 4.5, 5 yards per carry. It just makes the rest of the red zone open up a little bit. And I think the Lions offensive line and their running game has been really good this year. And I think that's a reason why their red zone numbers are much better than most, the average team. I was listening to a podcast last night, our pal Todd Furman and Payne on Bet the Board, and they made a very interesting point about the coverages that these two teams run that I wanted to add on to the handicap that I gave out on Pickswise Playbook this week. So Kirk Cousins has really struggled against man coverage this year. Some of his worst numbers of the season have come against man, and the Lions and Aaron Glenn play the most man coverage, and they blitz the most in the league, and not the most, but among the most. And the Vikings also struggle against the blitz. Kirk Cousins does not like pressure in his face. And on the flip side, the Vikings play a ton of zone coverage, and that's where Jared Goff has had the most success this season. So the defenses of both teams kind of play into the other team's hands. And we mentioned all the other things that the Lions have done well, the red zone numbers, Jared Goff being a lot more efficient, this defense being a lot more efficient, significantly more efficient than they were through the first 8 weeks of the year. But during this little 5-0 ATS stretch where the Lions have also won 4 or 5 straight up, they've really improved their defensive numbers. They've really improved their offensive efficiency numbers. They're playing like a top 10 team. And the Vikings are kind of in that teen range. So I'm not surprised that this is Lions -2. And despite all of the, national media people that don't really understand how the betting markets work, saying that, why are the Vikings 10-2, an underdog? Well, you have to look a layer beneath, and it makes sense to me. Now, we'll see. Now, they have to go out in the field and execute it. Doesn't mean anything. Just because the metrics look good for the Lions, they have to go out on the field and execute. But the numbers certainly point to Detroit being the better team in this spot.
Absolutely. And I kind of like the over here. I actually liked the over when it was up at 53.5. I like it even more now that it's 51.5. The Lions, we talked about how they're crushing offensively. They're averaging 32 points per game at home on the season, which is second in the NFL. And you talked about the defensive numbers, but they're still allowing 27 points per game, which is the most points in the National Football League. Most of their games have been shootouts. 10 of their games so far have gone over this season. And the fact that the total ticked down 2 points Give me the 51.5 over in the Lions laying the points in this one. Let's take it out to San Francisco. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into town. The Niners in this one laying 3.5 points. This is going to be an interesting game. That total pretty low. It's at a 37.5. Tampa Bay narrowly escaped the Saints last week. They were down 16-3 with 3 minutes and 23 seconds left. I think the Saints had like a 97% chance to win that game, which similar to last night, the Raiders had a 98.4% chance to win that game with 2 minutes left, which is crazy. But Tom Brady threw 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes. Rashad White with 3 seconds left. Now the Niners, they won over the Dolphins, but it came at a price. Jimmy G broke his foot out the rest of the season. Now Brock Purdy is stepping up. He looked Purdy. Finished the job last week. Now he's making his first career start. And I said this on Pickswise Playbook too, which if you haven't watched this yet, guys, go on watch Week 14, Pickswise Playbook. We break down all of the games for Week 14. Brock Purdy is the 8th quarterback to make his career start against Tom Brady. The last 7 quarterbacks that made their first career start against Tom Brady, they all lost. Is it going to be different with Brock Purdy? I'm not sure. I feel like this game is going to be the Bucs offense versus the Niners defense rather than the Niners offense versus, the Bucs defense. So we'll see how it goes. How do you kind of feel about this game and the Niners, laying just over a field goal at home?
Yeah, we've seen this number bounce around a little bit. It looks like the 3.5 to 4 range is kind of where the sharps are making their dividing line. It looks like at +4, the smart money prefers Tampa. And then at -3, that looks like the buy point for San Francisco, which makes sense. I mean, that's not exactly rocket science. Once this thing gets down to 3, that's usually where the sharp money steps in. In most situations, we saw the exact same scenario play out last night with the Rams, even though there weren't a lot of good reasons logically, analytically to back the Rams last night. Once it gets to that key number, and in this case, it's the 3 with the Niners, that's where you're going to start to see some buybacks. So keep that in mind if you're on one side of the aisle or another. This line likely will bounce around between 3.5 and 4, and maybe even back to 3 at some point over the next 48 hours. And depending on what side you like, don't buy a bad number. If you like the Ram, or if you like the Bucs, don't buy the 3. This might get back up to 3.5 or 4. Wait for it, and vice versa. If you like the Niners, it might get down to 3 again at some point this weekend, and that's when you should step in and buy San Francisco. Market timing and where these lines are is everything. In terms of the handicap of the game, I actually think the market is telling us Brock Purdy's not as big of a downgrade from Jimmy G as we might think. It's only about 3 points. This line was 6.5 last week, and now it's 3.5, 4. And I think that's kind of fair. Maybe it's even a slight downgrade, I would say, from that. I would say maybe only 1.5 to 2 points from Jimmy G to Purdy if Purdy can kind of, figure out this offense for Kyle Shanahan. I think it's going to be very simple. The game plan will be get the ball out quick. They will utilize Purdy's legs a little bit more. He's a lot more mobile than Jimmy G is. And this Bucs defense is coming off of a very tough physical game on Monday night, so they have a short week to prepare. And I think the Niners offense is going to have some success here. I mean, they've got literally like an all-star at every position at the skill position. So it's really just about Purdy putting the ball in the right spot and getting the ball into McCaffrey's hands, getting the ball into Debo's hands, and then letting them do the rest. This is a yak offense anyways with San Francisco. The reason why it works for Jimmy G is because he's quick, he's decisive, he knows the reads, he understands the system, gets the ball out, bing, bang, boom, and then his guys do the rest of the work. On the other side, you still got Tristan Wirfs banged up for the Bucs. That's bad at right tackle. So I think we're going to see a very similar game plan to what the Dolphins tried to employ last week, which is get the ball out quickly to the edges. The problem was Tua couldn't hit the broadside of a barn on Sunday with his throws. I think Tom Brady's going to be a little more accurate than Tua is this week. And also, it's kind of a homecoming game for him. He's from San Francisco area. He grew up loving the Niners, big Joe Montana fan. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game than we think. I think both offenses are going to have a little bit more success than this incredibly low total is indicating here. And I think over, to me, is the way to play it. I got 37, and I still would bet over at 37.5.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out. And to be honest with you, maybe the line hasn't moved as much because you look at the pieces around a guy like Brock Purdy. You plug you or me into that offense, and maybe it would only move 6, 6 points. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But to be honest with you, like you look at their offense and how much talent is going to be around Brock Purdy. It's like I'd feel comfortable plugging in, a lesser quarterback and still feeling kind of confident in the 49ers to get maybe the win, maybe sneak by. So we'll see how that works out. Tom Brady played well the last few minutes of the last game. Maybe he rides that momentum. I don't really know how to cap this game. I'm just excited to watch it, see how Brock Purdy does, see what the Bucs are able to do. He's the 8th quarterback to make his first career start against Tom Brady. Last 7 lost. So keep that in mind when capping the game. We also have the Dolphins taking on the Chargers. Dolphins laying 3 points. That total set of 52.5. This is the 3rd Sunday night football game for the Chargers this season, and they're hoping that this one is different than the others. The Bolts lost last week to the Raiders. Now they probably need to win 4 of their next 5 or last 5 for even a slight chance at making the postseason. Right now, the Dolphins right now are hunting for the AFC East title. They lost to San Fran last week. It's easy to like the Dolphins laying the points here. The Chargers are a bottom 3rd team in the league. Dolphins are a top 3rd team in the league. I think the Chargers are going to have a hard time stopping Miami's offense with the way that they're playing right now. They have so much talent, so much speed on that front, but Miami's defense isn't the best. It's the Chargers play calling that's kind of been holding them back. Do you think that they could call a few better plays, maybe take advantage of Miami's defense, or is this an all Dolphins game against the Chargers team that continues to charger all season long?
Yeah, I wouldn't lay anything with the Chargers for the rest of the year, right? But in this case, they're the underdog. We've seen just like that Bucks Rams or that Bucks Niners game. We've seen the 3.5-3 flip flop here all week, and it kind of seems like at 3 the money is favoring the Dolphins. At 3.5, it's favoring the Chargers. So I would expect it to kind of bounce through that narrow rest of the weekend. You're likely not going to get a better number on either side. The one injury news I think that is noteworthy here is the offensive line for the Chargers. Zion Johnson, their starting right guard, he was back at practice this week. Corey Linsley, their starting center, also back at practice this week. But Trey Pipkins, the right tackle, has not yet practiced. That's their entire right side of the offensive line, right? Like that needs to be healthy against the Dolphins pass rush with Phillips and with Chubb now that has been a little more aggressive and a little more assertive over the last few weeks. The Dolphins defense can be had in the secondary. That's the weakness. So if Mike Williams is healthy, Keenan Allen's looked pretty good the last few weeks, and you've seen other guys step into the fold. I think Justin Herbert can have some success against this Dolphins defense in the secondary if the offensive line can hold up. My guess is if those guys come back healthy and you get the entire right side of the offensive line back, I don't know about Mike Williams. The Williams and the Keenan Allen situation has been really unsettling this year. But I can see the Chargers being a popular, steamy play once. And I've even noticed over the last 24 hours, like the 3.5s are pretty much gone. And it's really just 3s or really expensive 3.5s. And we've seen the total tick back up from 51.5, 51.5, now 52. So I think that's kind of indicating that the Chargers offense is getting a little bit healthier up front, especially. And it might be a game where Justin Herbert has some success if he can, find those guys deep down the field, because that's where the Dolphins defense is a little bit vulnerable. Tua needs to bounce back. He had a really bad game last week. I think he'll play better this week. The Chargers defense does not put as much pressure and does not make life as difficult for you as the Niners do. So I think Tua will be a little more accurate, a little more comfortable this week, but Jalen Waddle's banged up. And so the dynamic duo of Waddle and Hill might not be as dynamic this week based off of what I'm seeing. Jalen Waddle did practice, and Terron Armstead, their starting tackle, also got in some practice time. So it looks like both teams up front offensively are getting a little healthier. That leads me to the over, and I think this is going to be a good game. I don't really want to pick the side in this game. I hope the Dolphins win for playoff purposes, but I don't know. I think it's pretty much a wait and see to see who actually suits up for both offenses in this game.
The under is 12-2 in the last 14 meetings, just if you want some trends. And the over is 4-0 in the Dolphins' last 4 road games. So we'll see what happens in that one. I'm excited to watch it as well. Let's take it into college basketball. Look into our crystal ball for a second, Jared, because I want to talk about UConn for a second. Are they going to remain a top 5 team the rest of this season? Because right now they're undefeated. They're sitting at number 5. Do you see that success continuing for UConn?
Yeah, I watched this game last night, 2 nights ago, when I bet UConn, or I bet Florida against UConn. It was the dead nuts wrong side. UConn is a legit team, people. They are a top 10 team, offensive, defensive efficiency. I didn't expect their offense to be as efficient. I don't think anyone did.
Yeah.
Defensively, I didn't expect. I mean, they really get into you defensively. I mean, they made Florida's life completely miserable in that game. And yeah, when you can play defense like they can, and if you can score a little bit, and right now they're a top 25 EFG percentage team. They are a top 25 shooting team. And, we're 10 games into the year now. It's not like we're, 2 or 3 games. Like we're starting to build a little bit of a sample size to say that UConn, who has faced Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Alabama, Oregon, Florida on the road, they've played some tough teams, and they've put the numbers up on the board that tell you that they're a top 10 team. So, yeah, I don't see why things won't continue for Dan Hurley's bunch this year. They look like a Final Four caliber team.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out moving forward. What about UNC? Because they had a really strong start to the season. They were 5-0. Now they've lost their last 4 games. They're 12th now in the ACC. Do they miss the NCAA tournament this year? Right now they're sitting at 5-4 on a 4-game losing skid right now. You know what that can do to a locker room, right? When you lose 4 in a row.
I don't know if they missed the tournament. I mean, I don't. It's all about who else is there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they lost a 4 overtime game to Alabama. My guess is
Crazy.
They lost the game to Alabama in 4 overtimes, and that kind of loss can kind of linger for a little bit. So it's not like they're playing, the Sisters of the Poor here. Their last 4 games where they've lost were against Iowa State, Alabama, Indiana, Virginia Tech. So I don't want to write off a team that right now is top 10 offensive efficiency, top 50, top 60 defensive efficiency, and have a ton of talent with a coach that was in the national championship game last year. Like this is a North Carolina team. I think that's very good. And they're just kind of dealing with a 4 overtime, the fallout of losing a 4 overtime game. The next couple games, it kind of is like a hangover, right? Like after a tough weekend, you don't feel great on that Monday afterwards going to work. So I think UNC will be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But the 4-game losing skid has to end at some point. They're one of the best teams, in my opinion, in college basketball. I think
it'll end soon. They play the Citadel next week, so I think it'll end soon.
That might help, yes. Which under-the-radar team do you think can win their conference at this point of the season, 9-10 games in?
Oh, boy. Under-the-radar team. I'm not sure where under-the-radar falls. St. Mary's having a good start in the West Coast Conference. I think Gonzaga is a little bit down compared to prior years, right? They don't have the high-end talent, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit. I would think, St. Mary's under the radar a little bit in the West Coast Conference. UAB is off to a really good start in Conference USA. They're 7-1. Andy Kennedy's done a really good job with that program over the years. Of course, he came over from Ole Miss. And this is a UAB team that's a top 30 offense, and they run a ridiculous tempo. Like, they just run all day. They have a top 10 adjusted tempo. So that's a team that's fun to watch, and they've been to the tournament prior. Jordan Walker's an absolute stud. Of course, they lost to Houston as the 12th seed in that 5-12 matchup last year. And we all know how good Houston is. So that's a battle-tested bunch that I think maybe is a little bit under the radar in an under-the-radar conference. Keep an eye on the Blazers this year for sure.
Absolutely. We got some big games heading into this weekend as I look at the top 25 list of college basketball teams. First of all, today we have Gonzaga taking on Washington. I don't know why I said it like that. Gonzaga's laying 17.5 points. That total is set at 149. Washington coming off of a big win over Colorado. Gonzaga, though, they're pretty good this season. How do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, fun one tonight, right? In-state rivalry. 2 teams that have had success in the past. Gonzaga's, like I said, they're not your classic Gonzaga team.
They're 6-3 so far in the season. They're ranked 18th in the AP poll. So they're not up there in the top 5, top 10 that we're used to seeing them, but still ranked in the top 25.
They have played a gauntlet schedule. They've played Michigan State on an aircraft carrier, Texas, Kentucky, Purdue, Xavier, Baylor. I mean, those are Final Four, Sweet 16 type teams. Texas might be the best team in the country that we're not really talking about a whole lot yet. I've already lost a bet against Texas betting Gonzaga earlier in the season, so I watched that game very intently. I think Kentucky's legit. They beat them. They lost to Purdue by 18. That was the result that surprised me. It didn't surprise me that Gonzaga went into Austin and got their doors blown off by Texas, who made like every three imaginable that night. And Texas looks to be like a top 4 caliber team. What surprised me was on a neutral site when they faced Purdue and their big man, Zach Edey, the 7-foot behemoth. They got absolutely dominated in that game. They were out-rebounded 46-31. And I think that's really scary because Gonzaga, when they do manage up in competition so far, they haven't really shown you that killer instinct that they've had, especially offensively in prior years. They're not as good of a shooting team in years this year than in last year. And I know they're in the top 25 in their EFG percentage, but this is a team last year that was second in the country in EFG percentage and third in adjusted offense. This year, their adjusted offense is still in the top 5. They're running a little bit of a slower pace. They're outside the top 70 in adjusted tempo, but they're not shooting it as well as they have in years past. And I know 21 is still a good rating, but when you're normally a top 5 shooting team and you drop out of the top 20, it's noticeable. So we'll see if the schedule has any impact on them. I like that Mark Few is challenging his team. He is not waiting till later in the year to face the tough teams in the tournament. He is making his team work in November and December, because when they get into the West Coast Conference calendar later in the year, there's going to be a lot of cupcakes on that schedule. So I applaud Mark Few for challenging his team at this stage of the season. This game tonight, I kind of like the under. In fact, I bet the under at 148.5. Washington's a team that likes to slow things down. They have not really cracked the 75-point mark many times this year. And all of their games so far this year have stayed under that total of 148.5. And I know Gonzaga is a different animal offensively, but what did I just say? They're not as gifted offensively as in years past, and they've played a really gauntlet schedule. So I could see a little bit of fatigue with this Gonzaga offense, and Washington's a top 60 defense that likes to slow things down. So 148.5 seemed like a fair number. Ken Palm's got this 80-65. That's 145. So if that's where the number lands, then we're feeling pretty good about our bet. But that's the only lean I have tonight. I do not want to lay 17 points with Gonzaga in an in-state rivalry. I think the under, little intensity here with these two teams that know each other pretty well, that are just from across the state line, across the state interstate there between Seattle and Spokane. And yeah, that's how I'm playing tonight. Under 148.5.
We have a big game tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's number 1 Houston taking on number 8 Alabama. Houston 9-0 on the season, undefeated. Bama 7-1. Their only loss coming to Utah. How do we feel about this game playing out? Because Houston is absolutely the juggernaut of the season. Like, they are so freaking good.
Yeah, number 1 team in the country right now. Top 20 offense, second in defense. They've also challenged themselves. Oregon, Kent State, St. Mary's. Like, they've played some tough teams. They're not just playing cupcakes. They've played some cupcakes too. Alabama, like we said, had that big win over UNC, 4 overtimes. And then they followed that up with a win over South Dakota State, who's not, elite. But South Dakota State's got some guys. They're one of the better teams in the Summit League. And I think this is going to be a really good game. I think Alabama runs a style that is very unique. Nate Oates likes, it's like kind of havoc-y. They like to get up and down their top 50 tempo. And they don't shoot it that well, but they are a good team at getting into you defensively. However, they don't force as many turnovers as I think Nate Oates would have liked playing this style. And I think that's where it's interesting. Now, they have improved. Actually, that's the one thing that when I'm looking at their numbers now, they have improved defensive efficiency significantly from last year, where they were 92nd now, and this year they're in the top 20. So I guess Nate Oates is preaching a little more defense to his team. They managed up one time. They played, other than that UNC game, when they played UConn, they got knocked around a little bit. UConn won by 15 and held Alabama to a pretty poor shooting percentage, especially from 3, and out-rebound. Actually, Alabama out-rebounded them in that game, which is pretty intriguing. But they turned it over 21 times. So that's going to be the bugaboo tonight. Houston's defense, which is great at forcing turnovers. They're a top 40 non-steal turnover percentage team. If they turn over Alabama and turn this into a more, disjointed game offensively, Alabama wants to get up and go.
Yeah.
And if Houston stops that, I think Houston wins this game. KenPom's got it 69-61. So keep that in mind when you're making your bets. I don't know what the line is really in this game since it's tomorrow. We usually won't get lines until later tonight. But
a little bit
should be a fun game.
Mm-hmm.
Should be a fun game.
Yeah. Yeah, and that loss to UConn that they turned it over 21 times. I mean, they didn't just lose. They got crushed by 15 points. Like, it wasn't a close game at all. So Bama needs to get it together, take care of the rock, if they want to beat a team like Houston that will take advantage of that. Now we have number 10, Arizona, with one loss this season, taking on number 14, Indiana, with also one loss this season. Indiana suffered their first loss against the Rutgers. They might be hungry. Arizona only has one loss against Utah this season. They're going to be hungry too. This is going to be an exciting game that I may or may not be up for because it is at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. But if we are up, Jared, what can we expect from this game?
Yeah, Mike Woodson's got this Indiana bunch playing pretty well. They had a good season last year, made it to the NCAA tournament, won a game, beat Wyoming in that play-in, and then lost to St. Mary's pretty handily in the 5-12 matchup later that week. But this is an Indiana team that is starting to sniff a little bit of that postseason success that they hadn't had in quite some time. And it's because of their defense. They're a top 20 defense. And that's, kind of what Mike Woodson preached during his time with the Knicks. And I think that's kind of his MO. He's a tough-nosed guy, and they play in a tough-nosed conference. Trice Jackson-Davis is the star of this team. He is going to be at the top of most of the player of the year type awards, midseason watch list type awards. He's a swing man. He can do it all, and he's a really exciting player to watch, and Indiana has a star, which is great. Arizona's got a few really good players. They also like to get up and go. So again, just like the Houston-Alabama game where it's Houston defense, Alabama offense, it's Arizona's offense here, which is the number one fastest tempo team in the country, second in adjusted offense, really against an Indiana team that likes to get into you defensively. So the style of this game is going to be kind of what dictates the tempo and the pace, which coach gets their way. If Indiana has their way, this game's played in the 60s or the 70s. If Arizona has their way, they get to 80. They've scored over 100 points 3 times already this year, and they've cracked 90 in another time. I mean, they dropped 100 on Cincinnati, who's, a top 100 offense or a top 100 defense, pretty decent team. So I've been really impressed with Arizona's efficiency on offense, and I've been really impressed with Indiana's efficiency on defense. I don't know which style wins out here. I would lean Arizona just because I don't know if I fully trust this Indiana team just yet. And they're still kind of new on the national stage, whereas Arizona's been there before in this type of environment. And this game is on a neutral court. Please keep that in mind. It is being played here in Las Vegas. And Arizona, you would expect, will have a little bit more of the home crowd being out here in the Pacific time zone. So, again, no line on this game. I can tell you KenPom's got it. Just a very slim 1-point win for Arizona. So maybe Arizona a little overvalued as a top 5 team. Maybe Indiana, if you get a good price on an underdog here, might be the way to go. But this will be another very exciting, contrasting style game that I'm curious to see which style wins out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's head from college basketball to college football. We have one game going on tomorrow. We're not going to dive into it too much because we'll get into that in tomorrow's show. The Army-Navy game. Right now, that total is set Navy laying 2.5. The spread is set at 2.5. Total set at 32.5. I like the under for this spot, obviously, because the under is 18-3 in the last 21 meetings. We know the unders between service academies always happen. But Jared, please break it down. What are you expecting from this game? Just a quick little run through because we're going to get into it a lot tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't have a lot here, to be perfectly honest with you. This isn't a game that I tend to like to really dive into, deep dive. I don't really think the numbers or the analytics really matter. This game's all about heart, and it's all about pomp and circumstance. I really enjoy watching this game. I would really like to attend this game at some point in my lifetime. It's just a great it's a great day for America in college football. Like it's really, there's a lot of nostalgia with this game that I really enjoy. I probably won't be betting it. Ironically enough, and I never would advise anyone to tease a college football game, but with the total at 32.5, you could do worse if you like Army than teasing Army up through both key numbers and maybe pairing it with an NFL game you like on Sunday. For example, the Ravens, which I really like, getting them through both key numbers since that line's now back down to +2.
Yeah.
So if you have to play this game, obviously the under, because I mean, if you bet the over in this game, you're asking for trouble. The under is 43-9-1 in the last 50-something Service Academy games. So like, you want to talk about ultra contrarian if you bet the over in this game. But the total's so low. If someone falls off the bench and the ball pops out somewhere and gets a defensive score, I mean, the total's going to go over because it's just so freaking low. But it obviously the under is going to be the popular bet of the day because of all of the trends that we've seen and how these teams play, the styles. Neither team likes to throw the ball. Navy's won 2 games this year without attempting a pass or without completing a pass. That's wild in today's college football, but that's possible. But yeah, I think under and maybe Army tees would be really the only bets I would make. But I'm not betting anything in this game. I'm just going to watch and enjoy and soak in the culture that is Army Navy.
We will be breaking that down tomorrow on Let's Bet It, so make sure to tune in. Let's Bet It, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odd makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no one across the pond setting lines for American sports, just the best team of traders in the business at the Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, some of the best odds boosts and promo bets in the country. So if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to start your battle against Vegas. From superbook.com to pickswise.com, Jared, 3-star plays. Hit me with what we got today.
A lot today. Got some Trevor Mack chiming in on some hockey. Jameer Poindexter, Suns Pelicans, Christopher Moraes, Rangers Avs, Mark Lammy, Ducks Sharks. So we have 4 3-star plays on the site for you today, plus all the NFL. Myself and Andrew Ortenberg both have 3 stars up on the site right now. So a couple of parlays on here too. I see a mega in the NHL that pays 10-1. Have at it, folks.
Have at it. One of them I'm tailing actually because, this is rare for me, Jared, but I am fading my Colorado Avalanche this week. I'm sorry to all my Avs fans out there that are watching this right now.
They're not going to let you back in the state of Colorado now. You're going to get disowned.
They are incredibly banged up at this point of the season. The New York Rangers are coming into town, and I actually like the Rangers puck line, similar to the 3-star play on the Pickswise website. You get it at really, really good value. It's like plus 170 right now if you shop around at a few different sports books. But I know it seems like a little daunting because the Rangers coming into town, Alexander Georgiev in between the pipes for the Colorado Avalanche. He's going up against his former team. This is a spot he's really going to want to prove that, hey, I'm in a better spot. I'm doing this thing. But you look at who's banged up on the Avs roster right now. They only have one of their top 6 forwards in the lineup, in Mikko Rantanen. I looked at their top line for tonight's game. It's Alex Newhook, Mikko Rantanen playing center, and Charles Hudson on the right wing. JT Compher centering the second line with Andrew Colliano, Logan O'Connor. They have so many guys pulled up from the AHL at this point. It's just crazy that the injuries that they have right now. Their top D pairing, Sam Girard, Cale Makar, Devon Taves, Eric Johnson, Jacob McDonald, Andreas England, all in the lineup tonight. So the defensive core is there. But when you look at what, the Rangers have done, they have 2 big wins that they're coming off of. Their most recent is a big win in Las Vegas, heading against the Golden Knights. But now they're heading into the Avs. It's not the same team that we saw play earlier this season against the Colorado Avalanche. Like, the Avs won the first game between these 2 teams this season, but I mean, they're missing so many players that this could be a really good spot for the Rangers, who have been playing really well on the road, to get some value laying the puck line, 1.5 goals. So I'm sticking with the New York Rangers in this one. We'll see what happens. A lot of that's just due to injuries with the Colorado Avalanche. Fingers crossed they could get healthier heading into the longer stretch of the season. But right now, guys need to heal up. And I think the Rangers are going to take advantage on Avalanche ice. How about you? Who you got?
Yeah, we are going back to the pitch. Big day, actually, right now, 0-0 Croatia, Brazil in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. I'm a little bit surprised Brazil has not put a goal in yet. But I did bet the under 2.5 in that match, and it does look, for the most part, we're in the 39th minute, looking okay so far. But the second match of the day is a 2:00 Eastern start. It is Netherlands and Argentina. And we are going to take a half a goal with the Netherlands, and we're going to lay about 40 cents for it. This is a Netherlands team that I think is a little bit underrated. Of course, we just watched them against Team USA, put 3 goals on the board just a few days ago. And I still think they're a little undervalued here because they're not the favorite. They're catching a half a goal at a reasonable price. And the Dutch have pretty much done what exactly we expect them to do, which is play defense pretty well and put a lot of goals on the board. The return of Memphis Depay, to me, is the big one. He came back about midway through the group stage. He only played about half of the minutes allotted to him during the group stage match as he was coming back from an injury. He was back full go in that USA match, and you saw just how dangerous he is. Top of the 18, wide open, just stuck it back in the net. No jitters, no nerves at all. And I think he's the best scorer on this Dutch team, and he's back at full fitness. So I think that's huge. And you get Argentina. Listen, Argentina's not impressed me at all in this tournament. They lost to Saudi Arabia. They've had some other close calls. Australia pushed them to the limit in the round of 16, and that is not a good Australia team. And I think when you look at this Argentina squad, I don't want to be laying with them at this stage. And I can really see Netherlands getting an early goal, locking in, maybe taking this 1-1 to extra time. But I can also see Netherlands winning this match 2-1. So I will gladly, at this stage of the tournament, I don't want to be laying goals and I don't want to be betting overs. I want to be under and taking goals because it is so tight. It is the matches are so difficult to get distance between yourself and the opponent because everyone plays at a world-class level once we get to the quarterfinal round, that I want to be taking goals and I want to be on the plus side of the ledger. That's where we are tonight or this afternoon. Netherlands plus a half a goal at -140.
I like it. That's it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Jared Smith, Lauren Jabara. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Let's get it. Let's bet it.